Welcome to Comic Wars. Think of the show as Fight Night, but without the mess of actual combat. The data will speak for itself before the outcome, but in case it doesn't, we will break all of it down in the outcome at the end of the show. Without further ado, let's dive right into our first competitor in the overview. Kind of a weird thing to say, I know, but as usual, we need to get right into this overview. As usual, our guest intro, if we had a guest, they would be right here along with their guesses. I will be making my guess tonight, as I will be, as you guys have seen, it will be live outcome. So I don't even actually have the answer at the moment. And I like to keep it that way. I like to have that surprise for myself as well. But after that, we get into the background details. This is going to be where we break down what is their occupation, height, age, weight, maybe some little miscellaneous information. As we have seen with the last episode we just had, it was Steam Tech versus Gear, we do know the background does play a factor occasionally in some of these fights. After that, then we get into their feats, so their strength feats, durability feats, speed and agility feats, their martial prowess, their ingenuity, their gadgets, powers, whatever it might be. We break all of it down here. After that, then we get into the data analysis. So we're going to go and take a look at what all of these feats really mean mathematically. Now tonight, there might be a little bit of it, but there's not going to be a whole lot of it. Going over the data, it speaks for itself pretty clearly on some of these things. And we've seen that we have actually had to break some of this data down. As you guys will see from next week's episodes, they will start to break down a lot more in these categories, as they matter a lot more in some of these matchups. After that, then we get into the character pros and cons. So this is going to look at their strengths and weaknesses against each other, kind of where we're tallying it up. Then we're going to go and look at the guest analyses, if we had a guest. But no guests, so we won't have to worry about that tonight. After that, then we'll break into the outcome and really list what are the chances each of these individuals would have at winning against the other, and what type of scenarios would actually be required for said certain victories. And then, last but not least, we have our preview for next week's episode, which is also the first episode of Round 2 in our Comic Wars matchups. And this really does mean Round 2 in the tournament, if you will, in these matchups, as that's how Comic Wars is run. So without further addition on time here, let's take a look at our first competitor, which is Daedalus. Daedalus' real name is Darren Wynn. He is 23 years old. He's 5 foot 6 inches. He's 150 pounds. Now his occupation is a little interesting here. He's a circus performer, but he's also a street performer. And on the side, he's also a vigilante. His areas of operation are Rain City and Capital City. As for his personality, he's peppy, argumentative, and arrogant. As for some miscellaneous information, well, as you guys can see on the screen, he is one of my characters from the Crowworks Comics universe. But I should have announced that earlier. But some miscellaneous information, what we really have here is he's actually the newest person to take on the Daedalus mantle, which is actually passed on from master to apprentice, and this always occurs at death. His father was actually the previous Daedalus, and the only reason that this mantle was passed on is because he was killed protecting his son, Darren, from a variation of the shadow persona, Minotaur. And he was just a variation. It wasn't even really the full Minotaur, if you will. I'll get into that in a bit, and how that all breaks down. After that, we have the feats. So his biggest strength feat is he fought off a variation of Minotaur who was capable of throwing a pallet of bricks at the previous Daedalus with one arm. And he was able to fight him to a stalemate. Now keep in mind, this guy is incredibly strong. He's going to have that physical fortitude, if you will, that endurance there, but he's going to have some pretty I would argue he's a pretty strong guy because he does have to do all sorts of acrobatic feats as he does work as an aerialist, which is his primary performing style, if you will. But he also does things like he can perform strongman feats. He performs pretty much anything during the circus. In a circus he can perform. That's just his specialization. He grew up in the circus. His father was a circus performer. There's a reason behind it. I will get more into the background a little bit more as we proceed because it will matter to some degree. But he was also able to knock out Cyclops, who was 16 feet tall, approximately, with one roundhouse kick. And this was more or less a flying roundhouse kick. 16 feet in there, I mean, just to go and get to his head, that's pretty crazy. But he was able to go and knock him out with one really powerful, strong flying roundhouse kick. As for his durability, he's survived being hit in the torso with the cement end of a stop sign that was pulled directly out of the ground by a variation of Minotaur. Yeah, that would not feel good. As for his durability, he has survived being hit we've already gone over durability. As for his speed and agility, he's capable of dodging Harpy's throwing feathers at point-blank range. Now, Harpy's throwing feathers, they become the equivalent of, think like a sharpened wooden stake. So, but we're talking much lighter because they're feathers. But they're a different kind of feather because they're not actual feathers, as this is a shadow persona. So these are actually more like a psychic feather, if you will. Incredibly lightweight, but incredibly durable, and incredibly sharp. As for combat capabilities, well, his martial prowess, he's just an acrobatic fighter. So he does basically brawling, but from an acrobatic standpoint. So he flies all around his opponent. It's basically his big gimmick here. As for his ingenuity, now this is where things get interesting. Now we're gonna have to skip ahead here just for a second. It's because he swaps and combines shadow personas to intimidate and confuse opponents. Shadow personas, they're essentially one's shadow self. But these shadow selves can sometimes leap from their originator. And these shadow selves, you kind of got to think it's you have to be within range of somebody that has the ability to summon shadows, which is where the Dark Circus comes into play. This is where it gets a little bit on the tricky side because of his background. Every Daedalus, their sole purpose, their sole duty, because they're not just a generational, but since roughly the beginning of time in the Grover's, they have sought out the Dark Circus. They have only been there to fight off the darkness, if you will. And this darkness tends to manipulate people's darkest desires, their struggles, their fears, and it summons a shadow self, which more often than not, if within direct range of something, we're talking within almost face to face, within like arm's reach, that shadow self will now be forced to go kill its originator. So that way it can replace them. Almost think like a kind of like a doppelganger of sorts. That's the best way I could describe it. But this Dark Circus has existed essentially since the beginning of time. And its sole purpose is the destruction of humanity. Now this gets into the biblical realm where did this all come from? This essentially comes from the essence of darkness itself. And it literally came from nothing. Just to break it down. And it exists in every single person, to some degree. But the only way the Dark Circus can actually summon up these shadow selves is it has to be overwhelmingly powerful. They can't just summon the weaker ones, the ones where it's just like, oh, I'm jealous of, Joe or Jane, right? So, all of a sudden my jealousy. This darker side of this person. Just because somebody's got a dark side doesn't mean they are going to have a shadow self manifest. And essentially that's how this breaks. It gets a little weird, but that's how this breaks down. But how Darren operates with this, now we'll break that down when it comes down to it. We'll leave that as kind of a little spoiler. So for those watching, you'll have to wait until we get to that explanation part. Or skip ahead if you like, I suppose. But after his combat capabilities, we have his gadgets. Now he's got 2 gadgets we really need to pay attention to. As you can see on the image we have right here of Daedalus, you can see there's a gold little thing on his wrist. It's on his little wristband here. Those are his Daedalus silks. They're magical aerial silks that increase and decrease in length based on the user's thought. It also drains a minor amount of energy from the user per use. So it's not a great deal. So he can use it quite a few times, but it does drain his energy. So it does make him very tired after several uses. They have a small electrical current that runs through them. Keep in mind, these are magical. These are not technically tech. They are tech because they are stored in his little wristbands. But they do have, because he has modified them, they do have some tech involved with it as well. Because he was able to compartmentalize his father's silks and turn them into essentially, it's got a lot of range now, just in this little compartment, and it holds into there. So that's how that works. It's essentially, think like rope, but it's because it's magical and it's got the electrical current in there. It's forever attached to a part in the wristband, but it can, as he's flinging around, he can throw them out there, and he can attach to whatever else he wants to catch. So that way he can go and silk his way through skyscrapers and things like this. He can also attach to people, and yes, it is a minor electrical current, so it gives kind of like a tingling sensation if it hits bare skin. But he also has a zipline gun. So it fires a zipline into a wall in front of the user, up to 30 feet away, and into the back, or into the it's supposed to say into a wall, but it says into a wall. Into a wall directly behind the user, up to 30 feet away, and it's only 1 use per 2 cartridges. You got to think kind of like how Crow's grapnel launchers work. He's got X amount of grapnel line in there. They do drop. When he does fling, the minute he's going on to release another line from that same one, that one drops and it attaches another grapple line and then flings out. This works very similarly, except these are 1 use per 2 cartridges. He's going to have 2 cartridges to be able to do that. He uses similar tech to Crow. Alright, after that, we get into his powers. Now he has a shadow absorption, which he can absorb shadow beams, which are then imprisoned in the Tartarus cells, which is just essentially a pocket dimension prison. He can physically go there at will, for the most part. There's very, very few factors that go into that. It doesn't really matter per se in this, but he can go to and from if he'd like to go and question them or things like this. But these shadow beams are literally trapped there, just like a prison. There's no real sense of time there to a degree. Like, time passes, but there's no need for hunger. If they go there hungry, they remain in that one position of hunger. However, it's manipulated in a weird way that when people come and go, they notice, but time doesn't affect the body. So essentially, they're trapped there and perpetual whatever they came in at. But they're still going to be able to interact with things. Like I said, it's a little weird, but that's how that works. So it's an interesting little tool he can use since he can go to and from at will. So think of it this way: he can use it as a hiding place. And the problem with it is, can he pull people there? Yes. I know that was a question I had a while ago when I was at a convention explaining this. Is this power? It's extremely useful, but it's extremely weird. Because yes, he can pull people in there, and they would experience the same types of things. However, if they've got a very strong shadow self, it will be pulled out. That's part of it. Is it utilizes the darkness. That's where the time manipulation comes in handy. But at the same time, he also, wherever he enters at is where he can exit at. Nobody can enter without him pulling them in. They have to actually be attached to him, either him holding them by their, somewhere on their body, or them holding on to him. All right, so that kind of explains the Tartarus cells and his shadow absorption. But after he defeats a shadow being, he's able to knock it out. Then he can drag it into the Tartarus cells. But there's the other part of this, his shadow persona, okay? The Daedalus shadow persona is one that is passed down from mantle to mantle. This is where things are weird. Daedalus itself is attached to the darkness, right? This dark circus. It's a performer. However, Daedalus is also a light of sorts, because it's not attached to the darkness in a way that it wants to be. It broke free, but it can utilize the shadow persona itself. So that's why Daedalus is always the same type of thing. Persona, or the personality of these characters, all differ, things like this, but essentially the suit itself, once it's passed to somebody, it's bound to that person, to their very soul, their very being. Every last bit of them is attached to it, becomes their shadow self. Not in the same psychological way, though. It's attached. I mean, a suit doesn't have a psychological attachment. It's how that works. So it's magical. It's a magical type of thing. It's very eldritch and very what's it called? Think kind of like the author of Cthulhu. I know I'm going to sound like a total lame-o here, but think the author of Cthulhu. Those types of eldritch beings. That's what the darkness is like. It's just there. It has essentially its one thing to do. It doesn't need to eat, doesn't need to sleep, it just kind of consumes. Well, this Daedalus itself is that old. And it goes way back, way, way back. But it's attached to, it's just essentially, just think the darkness itself, part of it was ripped off because it wanted to go to the light. It didn't want to be evil. It didn't want to continue that mission. It wanted to actually get rid of it. So that's how that works. But the Daedalus shadow persona can utilize supernatural powers obtained from absorbed shadow beings. So it has to go into the Tartarus cells, which is Daedalus itself, really. But they have to be inside of the Tartarus cells. However, personality traits can and often come through as well. So however these characters were, Minotaur, Harpy, Gigas, Darkwater, these personality traits can come through. But if if Daedalus utilizes multiple shadow beings, shadow persona, the greater the risk of personalities coming through. So just to list the 4 that he has at the moment where we left off in the comics. He has Minotaur, which gives him supernatural strength. Now to break this down, supernatural strength versus just super strength. Supernatural strength is not genetic. So this is something that somebody couldn't just, oh, I'm going to go do some tests on you. I'm going to go and pull this out. No. Drugs don't really, and I mean, they impair it, but they don't really impair it like it would, like, let's say Superman getting doused with kryptonite, for instance. His strength is greatly sapped. This isn't the same way. It's still there. That multiplier is still there. It doesn't go away. So this is where you get into multiplied strength versus just a given and having some kind of an attachment to some kind of genetic thing. This has always got that multiplier. You can't just take it away. He's got to take it away from himself. And next you have Harpy. Oh, I forgot to mention the Minotaur. His strength, the supernatural strength, is roughly a multiplier of 3, so 3 times his normal strength. Harpy gives a short distance gliding ability. So if he were to go and fall, for instance, he can just glide. And he also grows a cloak of lightweight hardened feathers. Now these are psionic feathers. So they have some weight. Think hard light. There's technically some kind of a weight there, if you will, because, well, can it crush people? Can people try to hold it up and not be able to? Yes. It's the same type of deal here. So it's very lightweight, hardened feathers. They're very, very durable. But think they're kind of more like a wooden stake. They're durable. So think kind of like a really hard oak or some kind of a hardwood like that. Think like that. That's like that type of durability. But they're also sharpened and they're very, very sharp. They're like scalpel sharp. But scalpel sharp wood, but this is psionic. I mean, it's basically what that comes out to. Gigas, which triples Daedalus' size, his height, his weight, and density for a short time. Current limit is around 5 minutes. That's all he can really hold that for. And then he comes with, the last but not least, the Dark Water, which is... This comes from Poseidon. It was his shadow self. As it was manifesting, he was able to basically just pull it right in. So instead of absorbing Poseidon at his fullest, he pulled the Dark Water, which gives him Poseidon's kind of water summoning and underwater breathing and all this he can do with it. It's pretty interesting. But it allows Daedalus to breathe underwater indefinitely. He can summon magical water to submerge a specific area. So if he just like, this 5x5 square, I want that fully submerged 30 feet up. It looks like a pillar of water. Pretty interesting. But on top of that, he can also fire water harpoons from the moisture in the air. So keep in mind, if he's in the desert, he's not going to be able to do this. However, he can just summon up magical water in a specified area. Now he's all of a sudden throwing these magical. He can do this all day, kind of thing. But he doesn't throw them, he just fires them. So he just kind of points and they just go in that direction. He thinks it. Once again, this is all psionic. So think he's kind of like a... it's like psychokinesis, if you will, but he can do all sorts of things. But this is how this kind of works, but it comes from darkness. It's really interesting. All right, last but not least, we have his weaknesses. So if Daedalus wields 3 or more shadow beings at once, or the shadow personas, the shadow beings or shadow persona are being utilized can break free from the Tartarus cells and emerge from the Tartarus cells prison. That means if he uses 3 or more, he greatly increases his chance. They could just go and pull him in there and get rid of him, or they could just come out and get rid of him. That's kind of how that one works. So it's weird. But essentially by using their power, he risks them breaking out and taking him out, or them fleeing. All right. As for our next fighter, we have Nightwing from DC Comics. His real name is Richard Dick Grayson. He's 25 years old. He's 5'10 inches tall. He's 175 pounds. His occupation, he's actually a bartender. He was an agent of Spiral, and he is also a vigilante. His areas of operation are Gotham City and Bloodhaven. As for his personality, he's very witty, jokes a ton. He's analytical, as he's a tactician. He was trained by Batman. He's highly intelligent. He does have genius level intellect, and he's charismatic, and he has been the leader or been in a leadership role in a few teams, including the Teen Titans, the Outsiders, and he's even been a part of the Justice League. So for some miscellaneous information about him, well, he's the adoptive son of Bruce Wayne, who's also Batman, adoptive brother of Damian Wayne, who's the current Robin, Jason Todd, who's Red Hood, former Robin, and Tim Drake, that should not be Time Drake, it's Tim Drake, who is the current Red Robin, who was the former Robin. He was also a Court of Owls candidate. They wanted him to actually become a Talon, which is essentially like an immortal assassin. And he took on the mantle of Batman for a short time as well. This is when everybody presumed Batman to be dead from the Omega Beams. As for some feats, he has a variety of them. So his strength feats, he possesses enough strength to break a holographic construct Bane's back. He threw KG Beast, who's 231 pounds, he threw him through a concrete wall. He can throw a refrigerator, which is roughly anywhere between 100 and 400 pounds, with exerted effort. He's capable of damaging Blockbuster, who has an extremely enhanced durability. And he can easily lift a man. An average American male is roughly 200 pounds, and this is with one hand. Strong enough to punch people through stone wall, smash through a sheet of ice from underwater, through a 280-pound man across a room, can bench press 350 pounds, broke Bane's back, it was once again, I doubled down on this, he broke the holographic construct Bane's back. He broke a car window while the car was submerged underwater, which is around 24,000 psi needed. He held back 19,000 psi bite force of an orca, and is capable of breaking a man's leg made of titanium. This guy has got quite the strength feat. For durability, he can tolerate large amounts of pain far greater than the average humans. He's highly resistant to toxins, capable of holding his breath for up to 7 minutes, possesses endurance similar to Batman, capable of surviving attacks from Blockbuster, which has superhuman strength, capable of taking bullet wounds and continue fighting, broke a car window while the car was... Oh, I copied one of these. Oopsies. I need to redo this anyways. Capable of enduring the high temperatures from fire, not for too long though. As for his speed and agility, he's capable of detecting a sniper, so it's pretty quick. We'll find that. Bam! Okay, I know where the sniper is. He can dodge several rapid-fire gunfire bullets at mid and point-blank range. He's trained to have peak human speed and is capable of sprinting speeds of approximately 30 miles per hour. Keep in mind, this is faster than Usain Bolt, who has maxed out at roughly 28 miles an hour. It's fast enough to tag a reserved Flash. This is a Flash who's holding back, to be able to tag him and actually lasso him. And is quick enough to dodge a kick from Jesse Quick, which is another speedster, much like the Flash. And due to Batman's training, he has senses that are so acute that he can effortlessly move around and even fight while blindfolded. That says something about his skill here. He is quite formidable. As for his combat capabilities, though, this is where things are going to get a little more interesting here. So, as for martial arts, he's mastered Eskrima, Aikido, Savate, Muay Thai, boxing, capoeira, kendo, taekwondo, jeet kune do, bojutsu, which is like staff fighting, hapkido, ninjutsu, which really isn't a martial art, but it's more or less sneaking around. There's some assassination type techniques, different ways to use different tools and whatnot. Tai Chi, Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, Kenpo, Wing Chun, Krav Maga, and Kobudo, which is going to be like size. It's going to be like more like your stick fighting too. You're going to get your size, you're going to get your daggers, you're going to get your kunai. This is where you're using tools like that. He's also a master marksman with firearms and throwing weapons. This guy, think Bullseye. He's like that tier with throwing weapons and firearms. He's also ricocheted his Eskrima sticks 37 times. This is with one throw before returning it to him. Able to make it go full circle, come right back to him. Ridiculous. Keep in mind, you gotta remember, every time as you throw something, the kinetic force, it starts dropping rapidly, actually. And then once it hits something, that also decreases it. You hit it so it changes rotation. Once again, that doesn't build up any more kinetic energy. It actually loses it. So he'd have to throw it hard enough that when it hits something, it bounces something else 37 times, and still be able to make it back to him. It's almost like a superpower or some form of magic. That's how ridiculous that gets. But he's also a master swordsman. He has beaten Batman, Talon, and Midnighter, some of the best fighters in the DC universe. He's been able to go and beat them either to a stalemate or directly just outright beat them in 1-versus-1 combat. He's also impressed the best martial artist in the DC universe, Lady Shiva, with his fighting skill. She's, well, debatably the best. Batman, technically, you could argue, is the best martial artist pretty easily because his way of fighting, he's gone beyond mastery. He's actually improved martial arts. Greatly improved them. He also has a fluid and acrobatic fighting style as well. So ingenuity, his tactical analytic skills allow him to anticipate opponents, including Batman, of all people, Deathstroke, things like this. People that are also master tactical analysts. He's also remained undetected by Alfred Pennyworth, Batgirl, Red Hood, and Red Robin in the Batcave for a short period of time. And he also has an eidetic memory. So you do something, he's going to memorize it. Just how it works. As for his gadgets, his Nightwing suit. It's a Nomex triple weave Kevlar suit that is electrically insulated and that is wired to give a 150,000 volt shock through the gloves. It's also a one-time use of that. He also comes equipped with a domino mask, contracted GPS coordinates of a cell phone, has thermal vision, can detect radio waves, and is capable of giving a detailed analysis of scenes and fights. Additionally, it also has the ability to refract light around the wearer's head to artificially alter their appearance. He's also been able to go and make himself look like the Joker to sneak into Arkham Asylum. He's been able to adjust his facial appearance so that way he can gather intel on Lady Shiva. As for his gauntlets, he can shoot remote bombs, has a sonic device, which also comes included with ear dampeners for himself. Arm blades, so think similar to Ezio and the Assassin's Creed type guys. He's got taser knuckles, so when he hits you, he can shock you at the same time. And he can fire a grapple line, which man, this is getting ridiculous. I know I'm hitting those buttons, but okay. He can fire, not can free, or fray, it's can fire a grapple line. Okay, so he can, using his gauntlets, he can, very similar to like how Crow works, he can grapple away just using his gauntlets. But he also comes equipped with, well, he has some implants, surgical implants. He has the Hypnos, which enables the user to hypnotize others. However, it can cause a two-way brain scramble if misused. And he's also got Identity Protection, makes the user's face unable to be captured by surveillance cameras or a person's memory. So you'll never remember him, essentially, his face. However, you can remember his body, because that's not his face. Alright. Next, we have the rest of his gadgets. He has the Screama Sticks, which can be combined to make a bow staff. When combined, it does not have electrical capabilities. However, when they are Screama Sticks, they can be electrified to be able to also hit with 50,000 volts of electricity. It also they come equipped with grapple lines and occasionally smoke bombs. He also comes equipped with a variety of wingdings, which are very, very similar, almost identical to batarangs. So he comes with the dull wingdings, that way he can just hit something. He's got the ultrasonic wingdings, which create a similar to how his sonic device works, a sonic frequency. It hits even harder with this. He's also got explosive wingdings, which they explode, and he's got electrical ones, which electrify. So more tasering. Comes equipped with some sharp ones as well, just as regular wingdings. They comes equipped with some smoke pellets, so that way you can just bam throw those on the ground, and now he's got a smoke cloud he can go and use to escape or to confuse or create a stealth type situation against his opponent. He comes equipped with the grapple gun, as most of the Bat family, or all of the Bat family do. Comes with flares, brass knuckles, lockpicks, and wrist darts, which are used to knock out opponents. As for his weaknesses and annoyances, well, he's technically insane because he was revived by Damian Wayne in the Lazarus Pit. Anybody that comes back from death due to the Lazarus Pit, they become insane. All right. So, we've got a lot of stuff we've already broken down. Now, when it comes down to it, do we really need to break everything down too much? No. So we can already see here, Nightwing has a variety of different examples. Daedalus is still a newer kind of character, so he's still lacking on some things here. But when we look at strength feats, we got to look at these first. So let's take a look at Daedalus' strength feats. Well, he fought a variation Minotaur. Now keep in mind it's a variation. The full Minotaur is much stronger than the variation. The variation is also what he has in the mental prison, or the Tartarus cells. So this one, he was able to go toe to toe with him. Well, he can utilize the same strength. So he went toe to toe with the variation physically, and was able to knock out Cyclops. He was roughly 16 feet tall with one roundhouse kick. So there's quite a lot of power now. Combine that with Minotaur, now you're looking at strength feats that are going to be triple that. He would have probably broke Cyclops' neck with one kick pretty easily. So now you're looking at just like something that's that big, a giant, you're breaking its neck with one kick. That's a pretty fierce kick, but he's reliant on his shadow persona here. So with his shadow persona, we know he greatly surpasses anything that Nightwing's going to be capable of in a strength feat. Throwing through a stone wall, this guy can he'd barely kick and break through a stone wall at that point. He's going to be ridiculous. So, when it comes to strength feat, that definitely goes with the shadow persona. It will go to Daedalus. And it's not really a contest there. Okay, that's just a given. We can't even argue past that. If you were going to compare the two, and I know this is me giving it to him early, but we have to. We don't really have a different choice. he's able to throw a refrigerator at 400 pounds. That's two-handed. Okay? You're looking at somebody that you throw a pallet of bricks, you're looking at like 500-600 pounds at least, if not more. And this guy was going toe-to-toe with him. He was able to exchange blows, but he's also able to damage him. That was the big thing. He was able to take the hits, but 600 pounds, you're looking at, now we'd be getting into durability, in which, well, we'll get into, but this isn't, he's got enough for the 24,000 PSI. Okay, and I'm going to do a little math here. Let's see. What's the striking force? Just to kind of calculate it out here, the individual average punching power is going to fall between 60 and 170 psi. This is at 24,000 psi. That's absolutely ridiculous. He's able to punch through. So he's hitting far above capabilities of a regular human being. Okay, so quite strong. His striking force is going to be up there, but it's not going to be as mighty necessarily. And just to kind of make some things just in clarity here, if a punch, okay, so I'm going to read this. This is directly from clclt.com. Punch thrown by Rocky IV villain Ivan Drago is supposed to measure 2,150 psi, and his glove's impact area is something like 4 square inches. He'd be exerting a force of 8,600 pounds, or more than 4 tons. Based on the professional literature, no boxer in real life comes anywhere close to that. So you're looking at exerting a force of 24,000 pounds, or 24,000 psi, okay? Let me break this down. It's a multiplier of 4. So if we're looking at 24,000 pounds, I mean, you're looking at a lot of weight here. 24,000 psi times 4, it's like 96,000 pounds. It's a lot of force to punch with just to be able to break the window. Now, I might be wrong on that, but that's roughly what it's coming out to here. So that's by inch. Now, you're looking at his punch, okay, see, we're looking roughly similar here. The glove's impact area, okay, well, now he's not looking at his glove, he's looking at a gauntlet. Something's going to have a hardened knuckles and things like this. You're still looking, it's close to this. So that's absolutely ridiculous. He's able to do this. So this is, I mean, technically speaking, this is where that comes into hand. This is where we have to break down the comics here. Is this something that is possible? Well, it doesn't really matter if it's possible. It's what he's done. So By that standard, we would have to give it to Nightwing, correct? So let's break this down again. So on data analysis, we already know that, okay, well, our strength, this is interesting, okay. Well, let's take a look at what about durability. Oops. Well, survive being hit in the torso with a cement end of a stop sign by a variation minotaur. Okay, well, then we also got to take into consideration one more thing, which is Gigas. Triples Daedalus size, height, weight, and density. So he was able to survive that. The force of that's going to be pretty ridiculous. Multiply that by 3. Okay, now remember, if he uses 3 or more, this is where things get interesting. It's height, weight, and density. This includes muscle mass. So for 5 minutes, he's tripling his strength, the size, and everything. His strength, though, it's going to be different because now his muscles are going to enlarge. He's going to get much bigger. Now you're looking at all sorts of other factors. Then you're going to triple that with Minotaur's strength. It's going to be ridiculous. So this is where he does technically surpass anything. And this is what I'm saying. This is where these multipliers, they're coming a lot of handy right here. But he's got 5 minutes of this. But you got to remember, with that much size and all this, gravity affects you differently. You start moving slower. We've all seen Ant-Man and all these other characters. These characters that enlarge themselves, what happens? Well, they get slower. They can't move at the same rate. And that's because gravity is just exerting a lot more pressure on them. All right. But for durability, you've got, he's becoming triple the durability at least of this. It's ridiculous. So what do we got from Nightwing? What do we got for durability here? Can tolerate large amounts of pain, far greater than the average human. Okay, it doesn't say a whole lot. High resistance to toxins. There's no poisons here. Capable of holding his breath for up to 7 minutes. There's nothing there yet. Possesses endurance similar to Batman. Okay, he's got endurance similar to Batman. Okay, it says some more things. Capable of surviving attacks from Blockbuster, who's got superhuman strength. Okay. Well, they're already squaring up right there. 2 personas, and it makes it so they're not squaring up. Capable of taking bullet wounds and continuing fighting. Well, we know that he just survived the wound, or the damage he took from the variation of Minotaur. Didn't continue fighting. That's the big thing to take away from this. He did not continue fighting, but he survived it. As for, he was also able to hold back an orca bite of 19,000 pounds. Holding that back. That's some endurance right there. He's capable of enduring the high temperatures from fire. So when it comes down to durability, he does not have that. But it's really interesting because he's able to go and hold back 19,000 pounds through stamina alone. That's definitely a feat. But we also know that when it comes down to his gadgets, right there, whoops. There it is. Nope, that's martial arts. We know that he's also got his Nomex triple weave Kevlar suit that is electrically insulated, that is wired to give 150,000 volt shock through the gloves, and it's a one-time use. Okay, so we do know that his Nomex triple weave Kevlar suit is going to basically be able to go in. It's going to be able to endure any kind of heat, and it makes him highly heat resistant, or rather fire resistant, and he's bulletproof. That's something to take from this. So he's going to be able to go and take a little more. He's going to have... The thing is, like, Kevlar doesn't really provide impact resistance. At least not a great deal of it. But we've got time now. Okay, so this is you'll see where this plays a huge factor on certain things here. Well, what about agility feats? Well, let's get into that then. He's capable of dodging Harpy's throwing feathers at point-blank range. Okay. So like metal knives. Or wooden knives, basically. They're going to be thrown... But, alright, let's continue. It's not that great when you compare it to Nightwing's. Nightwing's got him here hands down. Capable of detecting a sniper, but he can also dodge several rapid gunfire bullets at mid and point blank range. Dodging a bullet at point blank range easily surpasses that. He can also, when it comes down to his speed, he goes 30 miles an hour. And he's also agile enough to be able to go and lasso the Flash, who's holding back on speed, of course, but still. He's also quick enough to dodge kicks from another speedster. Plus, on top of that, he can fight without his sight because he has enhanced senses. We don't really need to break any of that down, of course. That's pretty obvious. So, and what do we got next? We have martial prowess. Well, we don't even have to go into Daedalus because he doesn't really have any martial prowess. He's just an acrobatic fighter. Doesn't really have any formal training. Now we go into... In Nightwing, it's ridiculous how much he can do. This is a guy that has impressed one of the greatest martial artists in the DC universe with his fighting style. This is another one who's impressed Lady Shiva's Batman. There's only a few people that have been able to actually impress Lady Shiva. But has also been able to beat Talon and Midnighter. Those are huge feats. But on top of that, being able to beat Batman, who's considered the best fighter overall in DC, that's a feat in itself. Now, it's not consistent. He can't always beat Batman. It's Batman's bloodlusted. Nightwing doesn't have a chance. Alright, so what about ingenuity? Well, the one thing we have to go and really throw into the fight here when it comes to ingenuity is you've got the personas. The shadow personas that Daedalus can utilize. So you've got Minotaur. So now he becomes really gruff and kind of thing. He changes his personality, so it looks like he's like schizophrenic, or he adjusts. He adjusts his personality because of his personas potentially. But things like the Darkwater, it doesn't have a personality. It's just there. It's eldritch. It just exists. And it has its mission. That's it. So it makes him very focused. He's got one job to do. That is it. One job. And then you got Gigas, which is just... It just wants to kill and destroy. That's all it lives for, really. But it's very angry, but it's not highly intelligent at all. It's not even intelligent. It's incredibly unintelligent. And you got Harpy, which is very conniving, and it analyzes every little thing on how do I take this out? How do I go and how do I win this? How do I defeat my opponent here? And Minotaur, another angry, very kind of quiet individual, but once he's engaging his target, he becomes just ruthless, angry, intimidating. So you can see the personalities. This is going to make some weird combinations here. But it's what he can also do is by utilizing a couple of them, he can now adjust all sorts of things. So he can go like, look at the combinations here. Minotaur and Gigas. Now he becomes incredibly durable and very, very strong. Does anything really mix well with Darkwater? No, not really. You could go and argue Harpy, but not really. I would say Gigas and Darkwater would probably be your best bet. But either way, he starts combining 3 or more of these, they can also break out, and then they become an enemy of his, or they could flee. So ingenuity is kind of an interesting one for Daedalus, because he can do all sorts of things, but it's a limited time, and what he can do with it is also its combos. This is something that people might be able to pick up. But when you look at Nightwing's ingenuity, he's been able to take on metahumans. He's been able to take on the android Amazo. He takes on Deathstroke. He's beaten people like Batman, for instance, the greatest martial artist. He's able to go and actually anticipate Batman. That's a feat in itself, a huge feat. But he's also very, very stealthy. So given a chance to be stealthy, he's going to have a huge lead here as well against almost anybody. And he has an eidetic memory, so these combos he's going to memorize. All right, and what do we have left? We have gadgets. Let's take a look at gadgets. What kind of gadgets do we have to really look forward to seeing? Well, you got the Daedalus Silks, magic, okay. But they're also going to be able to do things. That's his way of getting around. He can utilize them in combat as well. But it does drain his own energy, so this is a risk. As for his zipline gun, he can use that. He can use it as a weapon if he really wanted to. So, but it's going to make it so he can utilize acrobatics for combat. Well, is that going to be an advantage? Not really, when both your fighters are acrobatic. But you got his Eskrima sticks. That's good. That's enough. That's going to be able to put somebody on their butt pretty quick. Plus smoke bombs. He's got all sorts of gadgets where he's going to be able to go and utilize confusion and intimidation pretty quickly. So just going on gadgets alone is going to be also a huge one. Is almost all of his he can utilize as a weapon, also for distraction, intimidation, confusion, all sorts of things. And plus he's also able to also increase his martial arts capabilities by electrifying his Eskrima sticks, which is pretty interesting. So we've done also at the same time as you guys probably figured out, we did some data analysis, but we also did character pros and cons at the same time. So just as a quick run through, what do we got here? Daedalus. Yeah, he technically does beat Nightwing in strength. A short period of time. So the minute that 5-minute mark runs out, that's when Nightwing takes over on strength. Durability, that for 5 minutes, that's where you get Daedalus, once again, who is ahead. After that 5 minutes, Nightwing is more durable. But this is where things are going to break down to pretty one-sided here. So your speed and agility, that's a hands down, that's Nightwing. He's got that handedly. Martial prowess, hands down, Nightwing. Ingenuity, hands down, Nightwing. And gadgetry, hands down, Nightwing. So after 5 minutes, this is a guaranteed, it becomes Nightwing's battle where he wins solidly. So you're looking at roughly, if you're looking at a 5-minute fight, you look on how the average of people, how they fight. Okay, so you're looking, if I had to guess, out of 100 battles or 1,000 battles, you'd be looking at roughly Daedalus would have anywhere between, I would say probably about 2 and 5% chance of winning. But he'd have to have those situations lined up perfectly. And even then, if you do take into consideration the tactical analytic skills and the fact that the biggest game changer against Nightwing is going to be trying to drown him, it doesn't really matter because he can hold his breath for 7 minutes, and he's also capable of dodging close range bullets. Now you increase the gravity and all this, the pressure underwater. Well, he's trained for this. He's going to be able to go and dodge those water harpoons potentially. Not to mention, those water harpoons, they hit the water. It's water. He'll feel some force from it, but it's not going to be enough to potentially even pierce him, because it becomes water mixes with the magical water again. So, end of the day, this after 5 minutes, this is very, very one-sided. If you look at the typical human fight, how long does it take? Usually most fights go a couple minutes and then it's over, right? Nightwing is trained to be able to fight for hours. So it comes down to endurance there, and it doesn't make a difference if Nightwing's going to have this. You're probably even looking at probably more like a 1% to 2% chance Nightwing will lose. And it would have to be ended very, very quickly. And then, of course, you have to increase the risk of he would have to use all 4 persona to be able to, or all 4 shadow persona to be able to actually do a whole lot against him, to be able to actually solidly do it. And he's got less than 5 minutes, or 5 minutes and less to go and actually do that, to get the job done. So you're probably looking about closer to about a 1% chance. It's not very high. So, winner, Nightwing. As for Monday's episode, it'll be Ghost Kiss versus Crow. Who will win? The Roofie Kisser or Rain City's finest vigilante? We'll find out on Monday. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you guys have not liked or subscribed to this video, or to my channel, of course, now's a good time to do it. So yeah, just hit the subscribe.